Oh, and we're live. There we go. I didn't realise we were live there. But anyway, there we go. So what a week, what a week it's been. You know, since there's no one here, I'll start off talking about the weather. Then no one can be annoyed. typical British thing to do, really. Weather has been insane. You know, we've had thunderclouds during the summer, and it's been absolutely insane, especially with the weather. Just, you know, non-stop roller coaster this week, and even today, this morning. Last night it was like a hurricane almost being blown around. Oh, good morning to you there. Welcome. So, if the stream suddenly stops, or I have to dip under a tree. Oh, morning there from Thailand. Good morning. Welcome as always. So yeah, we've got this bizarre weather system happening at the moment, and it's, yeah. So if I have to suddenly just duck out and stop the stream, or we end up having to hide under a tree for quite some time, you might know why. But hopefully, fingers crossed, the weather does look all right. Also, we might have to watch out for the cows and horses, because they've been, I think because of the weather, they've been really skittish. A couple of times this week, the cows have been charging at people and things like that. So I can see them in a field right over there, but hopefully they'll stay there, and we won't get, we won't be in the middle of a stampede. You know, YouTube's very first live stampede. But that's the point. Anyway, first things first. Interestingly enough, there has been a Conservative MP, a guy called Bernard. Is it Bernard Castle? I want to say that's his name, but he's in charge of the group of MPs that are responsible for holding the Prime Minister to some sort of oversight. And he's been complaining about the Prime Minister's bad behaviour. And when you say that, you're like, well, which bad behaviour are you talking about? Because let's face it. Oh, whoop. Good morning there, or guten Morgen, shall we say? Looks like you're from Germany with the Morgen. So when you've got, and quite an influential MP as well, because not only this, he's quite an influential Brexiteer, he's a hardcore Brexiteer as well. And I think he was put on the Netherlands, right? I think he was put on the committee to hopefully try and be nice to Boris. But luckily, I think we've landed with someone who's actually going to challenge Boris, because this is one of the things we've been saying on this channel, is that sooner or later all these Conservative MPs are going to get fed up with Boris. They're going to be really worried, and have serious concerns about their election chances the further they get to an election. And if Boris already he's already up to almost his first year in office now, and he's managed to chart quite a very successful number of U-turns. We've had 8 U-turns so far, which I think works out to almost about one a month, I think, something like that so far, which is for an MP, for like a, not an MP, for a Prime Minister in 1 year. That's quite a substantial amount of U-turns. I wouldn't be surprised if Boris does go down in history as one of the Prime Ministers with the biggest amount of U-turns there is. But it's been more amazing for the fact that he has been really serious and critical of Boris, because because the Conservatives do have such a large majority. The only way really to oppose Boris at this point is if the other parties can convince, Labour especially, to come to their side and vote with them on those issues. And I think you will see them do that. Oh, hang on. Yeah, let's look at all the positive Boris has achieved. Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. There aren't really a lot of positives he's achieved, and we've said this before. You can't run a government based on what are essentially slogans. It's what are you going to do with a slogan government of the big one obviously at the election was get Brexit done, but how exactly are you going to get Brexit done? It looks like that the negotiations have failed again with the European Union, and we'll probably get into that next week. But once again, Boris Johnson's red lines have failed, and the EU has pretty much kept firm on their commitments, and they've been very committed since day one. Of Brexit. They've basically said, "Hey, look, we're not going to compromise the integrity of the single market for you." That's been their true line, and they've kept to that. And that is what Boris seems to think that somehow can happen. That somehow we are going to be allowed privileged access, as it's been described by the European negotiating team. Britain wants privileged access to the single market. And you're like, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way at all. And we've had, the new latest one, of course, is, Parliament's on its summer recess. And just during this summer recess, not only has, recent crises, just off the top of my head, you've got the coronavirus spots are on the up. Just this morning, there have been a couple more local lockdowns being enforced in the UK. You then had, just this past week, the whole A-level crisis, the GCSE crisis, and now the BTECs look like they could be in for some fun coming up as well. And it's just been a non-stop roller coaster ride. Not only that, but you've had Public Health England is being done away with without any parliamentary consent, which should worry people so much. I've said this to a lot of people, especially this week. If you've been watching my videos, Public Health England is just as important as the NHS. And without the Act, that ends up putting more pressure on the NHS. Public Health England is like, they're the body that sorts out all like the awareness campaigns and does all these different types of stuff. Oh, good morning. More people from the Netherlands joining us. I really should work on like my my international good mornings, and I can. So when someone says that from a different country, I can just greetings. But yeah, we've had this bizarre, absolute bizarre time, and the fact that Public Health England has gone is should be a massive wake-up call to people. Should be. And, I'm making I continue to make the case to people with Public Health England gone, and and the woman who got the job. I can't remember her name. Is it Diao? She's a wife of a Conservative MP. Surprise, surprise. had such a bad reputation that she couldn't run the talk comms desk. And you're like, what are you going on about? And someone just there said, oh yeah, people are asleep, and they are asleep. You know, the fact that Public Health England has gone is going to be used, I guarantee you. The whole Public Health England thing, now that it's gone, is going to be used as like the scapegoat when it comes to the inquest into the coronavirus inquest when it happens, and it will eventually happen. It's just a matter of time. They can't, this is one thing that Boris can't actually put off. The only thing that a lot of Conservative MPs are stopping from doing it is that they know they're going to get absolutely, completely reamed when the report comes out. So they're trying to already prepare the scapegoats, the excuses, as much as they possibly can to try and get over it. And Public Health England will be, I guarantee you, when we hear those, that's it, Dido Harding. When we, she's the new person who's taken over it, and she's absolutely awful. If you go and look her up, it's unbelievable. The amount of, if you think Chris Grayling is bad, she's like the female version of Chris Grayling. It's unbelievable the amount of failures that she's had. She look up when she used to work for Talk, and the absolute chaos that was said that she couldn't even run a desk where essentially she had to do nothing. That's the shocker of that. She had a job where she got paid a large amount of money to essentially do nothing for Talk, and she made such a mess of it. It's unbelievable. But that's where we are. It's unbelievable. I keep on saying it's unbelievable, but I genuinely don't know what else to say when we get news like this. You're like, okay, yet another, incompetent, wife of a Tory MP gets a job, and you're like, what do we do? Because unfortunately, there isn't, other than really putting pressure, which has affected a lot of these U-turns. There's not a lot we can really do if the Tories decide to pass certain laws. For example, let's say we manage to put enough pressure on Boris to, restore Public Health England. Chances are, it's not going to happen. But you'll notice that Public Health England's been given a new leader because Public Health England was under the direct jurisdiction of Matt Hancock. Public Health England reported directly to Matt Hancock. That was his job. That was his, oversight. That was their top boss. So the fact that Public Health England, even if it wasn't, performing, and he didn't take into the fact that, it's had its budget cut by over 40% for the past 7 years, which is a huge amount. And once again, shows you how, a public service being cut from, having its money cut so severely is absolutely unbelievable. And then you also had the announcement this morning that we either passed or we reached the £2 trillion mark, which now means essentially the Conservatives owe 100% of our annual GDP. And you've got Rishi Sunak saying that austerity and that people losing their jobs should not be the price that people have to pay. And yet, come the October budget, you will see more austerity forced onto local governments to try and pay for it. Now, remember, wind back the clocks back to when the Conservatives first came in with their in the first coalition government with the Lib Dems. This was, austerity was all to try and pay for the 2008 crisis, that we'd been paying out too much money, that it was the Labour fault, that this is where we were. And yet, you have a look at actual data, that doesn't work out that way. It was because of the 2008 crisis that it happened. And the fact that the government at the time, under Gordon Brown, really didn't respond fast to it enough, which was the big down point to it. And that's what affected us so much. So when the Conservatives came in, the whole strategy was, let's go for austerity. Now, the Lib Dems did hold them back in austerity, and time again we've been shown that if we hadn't gone the austerity route, that if we had invested in the UK instead and done the complete opposite, we would be in a far better position today in the UK than we would be anywhere else. In fact, I'm willing to say Brexit probably wouldn't have happened, because austerity was a massive factor in the Brexit vote. And we've got to really, dig down deep and just look and go, we need a fresh course for this country. Because if people think that Rishi Sunak is going to somehow, when the autumn budget gets read out, that he's going to do all this investment. And remember, Boris's big investment plan wasn't actually any new money. It was just money that had been spread around, which was why it was such a low and unambitious amount. We need to spend money, and we need a massive investment scheme into this country, because austerity, as it has shown, hasn't really done as much good. And this has been the main thrust of the Tory party for over the past 15 years. Austerity. We've got to spend less. But as we've seen under the Conservatives, our national debt has only increased. So remember, this is meant to be the party of business and fiscal responsibility, and yet they've only managed to somehow implement a policy that was meant to be meant to reduce our national debt, reduce our spending, has only gone up. And yet, here we are. It just goes to show you just how incompetent they currently are, and has been for really some time. And we can only wish, if only we could go and live in the universe where Ed Miliband could eat a bacon sandwich right, and then maybe he won the election. Fun times to think that. Fun times to think. And of course, Boris has been once again missing in action. So remember, we've had all these crises, and you remember my last live stream where I was saying, I was expecting some sort of announcement from Boris about this. No announcement at all. Boris has been playing, if you know the character of Where's Wally, he's been trying to enact his own game of Where's Boris. And you're just in this bizarre situation of we're having all these crises, and the Prime Minister is nowhere to be seen. And I've said in a couple of my videos that are going to come out next week, if you're in the UK, you need to write to your MP and say you need to push for the House of Commons to be brought back. And yeah, he is apparently camping somewhere in Scotland. And on another funny note, I read this morning, apparently the farmer, the sheep farmer, where he'd set up his tent, he hadn't even asked permission to set his tent up there. He'd just gone and set up his tent on someone's private land, and you're like, oh, okay. You know, if that was anyone but Boris, the second the farmer reported that to the police, he'd have been moved on. But because it's Boris Johnson, no, he gets to stay. And you know, he could have, if he'd found out, maybe moved his tent. But you know, that's Boris Johnson. That just shows you the amount of privilege he thinks he has. He can just, you know, set up a tent on someone's private land and just go with it. Oop. Oop. Morning. Oop. But that's just Boris and his level of, you know, it's hard to describe. It's just sheer level of privilege the man has, that he thinks he can just go and set up a tent, and you know, it speaks volumes. But you know, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Morning. Huh. Well, at least it looks like it's going to be a nice day today. The other thing we've got to talk about, and I think I'm going to have to do a video on it at some point, is Labour, Momentum and Keir Starmer. Oh my. So I think this takes a bit of explaining, really. So prior to, in the early 90s, Tony Blair becomes leader of the Labour Party and manages to successfully move the party towards a more centre-left position. And this really upsets a lot of leftists, and that's fine. But the problem was that after Tony Blair had won the single biggest election victory Labour ever had, a lot of leftists, especially after Afghanistan and the Iraq War, left the party. So you have what is traditionally the left party in the UK, and a lot of people leaving the party. And you have to come to the conclusion that if people on the left are going to leave the party, at what point and how many people in the party are going to be left there to organise and agitate and be a positive force for, you know, the left in the party? There has to be, if there's no one in the Labour Party to advocate for leftist policies, you know, it's no surprise that you saw sort of the Labour Party take this very, very much a centrist, probably like they straddled the right line, really, if you really want to press down on it. But they were always still very sort of centrist left wing, and the problem was it wasn't left wing enough for people. And as I said, as a result, the more they did that, and the only reason they did that was because leftists abandoned the Labour Party. And if there's no one to, advocate for, leftist policies, then that's what's going to happen to the party. And so time moves on, more and more, and then Ed Miliband comes in, And then Ed Miliband goes, right, I'm going to go, here's the new rules for, voting a leader in. And of course, this is where Momentum comes out, a grassroots campaign to get, proper old school lefties, and, majority of them were very young lefties, which was an amazing achievement, by the way. I don't want to undercut Momentum by saying that they didn't do a good job advocating and getting people into the Labour Party, because they did. They did a very good job, especially for people on the left, and especially young people, getting them engaged and involved in politics, probably for the first time. And not only just young people as well, but people who were older, maybe didn't vote before. That's what they did. They managed to get them involved for especially the first time. Oh, hang on. There we go. I apologise for the car noises, but we're just walking alongside the road here now. And of course, Corbyn gets elected. Now, what happened under Corbyn? Well, you had all the traditionalists, the people who were the centrists, the left centrists, people who were right centrist in the Labour Party as well, went, oh no, this is going to be a disaster. And it comes to a point where if this was any other party, you've just had a massive infusion of really young, active voters come into the party for the first time and get involved in politics. It wouldn't matter what party I belonged to, whether I was like centre left, centre right, whatever. Hang on, well, let's pass. There we go. This is why I don't come this way often when I'm normally doing my live stream, because there's far too many cars. And as a result, it wouldn't matter to me, because you've got this new generation coming in of politicians, and young people who are going to vote for your party. That's a good thing. The problem is they looked at it as if it had been an invasion, as if all these young people had come in and pushing for policies that they didn't really want. And as a result, you had, let's call it really what it was. It was a Labour civil war between what was essentially the new momentum part of the party versus the your bog standard Blairite, very centrist, left-right type of guy. And when Jeremy Corbyn first came in, and I always tell you what, we'll just motor forward here before we continue. We'll just get off on the road so you can actually hear me then, so you've not got cars coming past. There we go. There we go now. Back to the countryside. Oh, what? 42 people watching and only 16 likes. Oh, come on, people. Remember to like the video. Helps out the stream. We get more people watching. More people watching, better it is for everyone. We get to spread, lefty politics. That's what we want to do. So hit the like button, and we'll continue talking about momentum. So when Jeremy Corbyn first came in, I was one of the people who was really, really concerned, because I liked Ed Miliband. Ed Miliband was, did actually have quite a good charm. And the thing is, I met Ed because Ed Miliband's not too far. He's Doncaster MP. I've had a run-in with him a couple of times, especially in the business world. Met him, and he's actually quite a genuine good guy. I think he does genuinely care about people and trying to make people's lives, especially from low-income backgrounds, a lot better. And I was like, this is a guy that could slowly push Labour back to being left. And my concern was when Corbyn came in, was that Corbyn was going to put the foot on the gas and push left far too fast. And in a way, that's what a lot of people, especially his critics, said that's what he was doing. However, when his first manifesto came out and he started putting out, his manifesto promises, really, that's not what happened. Yeah, they were very leftist policies, but there were nothing really drastic. They weren't, as left as people were saying they would be. In fact, in most other, European countries, these policies already existed and had proven their worth, that they were good policies. They had a new housing policy to build more houses, to nationalise the rail, which would be amazing because, as we've seen currently in the UK, rail privatisation has been an absolute disaster. It wouldn't surprise me if you've heard about the accident that happened in Aberdeen. That had something to do with moneyed interests and the fact that privatisation had been at fault there, just like it had been in the Hadfield back in 1995, which resulted in all the British maintenance workers that maintain the railways being brought under a nationalised government agency. So we've had this very much push from Corbyn to be left. And the first manifesto came out and I was like, oh yeah, actually, no. Corbyn's actually got a good point. He'd been doing some relatively, good speeches. He was good. I'll give Corbyn praise where he deserves praise. He was good a number of times. He gave some very good barnstorming speeches, and then so that other times he was like really low energy. And I don't know whether that was because maybe his age played a factor into it. Maybe he was just too old to be on all the time. But there you go. You then have the whole let me say it properly. The whole anti-Semitism drama played out, which was a complete red herring. There was no anti-Semitism in the party, and it's bizarre that you had, who was it? There was someone in the Guardian today who was part of the whole palaver. She was saying, the Tory party's so, anti-Semitic, but not actually naming names or examples of where, she'd been, victims of this, and saying, what happened. Now, hey, it's just, if you're going to say stuff like that, at least name names and point people, and say what's going on. And the problem was, what really problem was that you had the right-wing Labour, Jewish groups who were massive supporters of Israel and the government of Israel, who didn't want someone like Jeremy Corbyn, who was very, very pro-Palestine, being in a position where he could be Prime Minister and advocating against Israel and bringing to light more attention on Israel. Because sooner or later, Israel is going to have to decide what it wants to do in that situation, and it's going to have to decide sooner or later what it wants to do. Either go for a whole, one Israel, which was not going to happen, or go for the two-state solution. It's going to have to decide what it actually wants. But during that meantime, the the right wing in Israel is trying to push more and more and more, trying to get these lands. Now, I see enough on the Israel front, but you have really, really big problems of, the person I was referring to recently, she did another article in The Guardian saying about how Boris Johnson is, the most racist prime minister we've ever had. And you're like, hold on for a second. You helped this whole, anti-Semitism drama being stirred up. And you're now saying that about Boris. Just doesn't make any sense. But yeah, it was a complete non-issue. The party did take active steps to try and fight against it. But as we now know, all this was drummed up by the higher-ups. And not only just that, but you had them actively pulling funding and lowering funding from MPs who were supporters of Jeremy Corbyn in swing seats to try and make him look weak. That is not what should be happening. The higher-ups of the National Council of Labour need to be just gotten rid of. And this is what's coming up and going to be the fight at the Labour's National Convention. They're going to be absolutely, they need to be gotten rid of. And this is what I've said to Momentum. That should be your issue, and don't make it a single party issue. You need to make it a multi-party issue, because you need to make the case that what happened was completely unacceptable, and that no, democratically elected party should be put in that position by its national board of executives ever again. It's just unacceptable. They should be gotten rid of, thrown out of the party for what they did. We know all this thanks to Labour leaks. And that's what needs to happen. We need to push for that over and over. That's what needs to happen. We need to get people who are going to get on their national board of the council, and they're going to reform that so that it is more open and transparent. And so that, let's say, another Corbyn gets in, that forces cannot conspire against a guy who would have generally been a very good prime minister, by the way, especially during times like this, because you're seeing the short-sightedness of the Tories kick in massively. Of course, the furlough scheme is winding down and set to end in October. You've got evictions are going to start again as of next month, which is going to leave a lot of people homeless because they're not going to be working. We've got thousands of people unemployed. Who do you want in office? A guy who actually generally seems to care about people and their plights, or a guy who's a complete narcissist and, doesn't care about people's problems? Because that's what Corbyn has shown. Helicopter. That's what he was, and it's an absolute, it's the biggest shame we've ever had. We could have had a prime minister that actually cared about the country, about people's problems, about the working class of this country in a way that we haven't seen for years. And unfortunately, we didn't get that. We got the exact opposite in Boris Johnson. And we can only but wonder what a Corbyn premiership would have been like. And I can guarantee it would probably been good. Wouldn't have been perfect, because no prime minister or run is ever truly 100% perfect. But I'll tell you what, Corbyn would have given it his damn best, I tell you that. We wouldn't have had the gallery of sycophants on the front bench that we have with Boris, who've just been completely, royally screwing everything up at every opportunity. We wouldn't be getting rid of public health. There'd already be an initial inquiry into the works, finding out, what was happening, what was going on. Corbyn would have locked down a lot sooner, and would have seen a lot more, policies to help people and businesses put in place to help people. I keep on saying it to people, but this Eat Out to Help Out scheme is quite socialist. It's a socialist policy. It's Tory socialism, and Tory socialism doesn't normally work towards people like you and me. It normally goes towards big business and international businesses. So enjoy this brief respite while you can, because the true problems do come next year. And I keep on saying this, but next year that's going to be the big reveal. This is where the problem is going to come from. So I am glad that Keir Starmer is in. However, the problem is that now, at the start of this, I said that he had all those leftists who abandoned the party under Blair, and as a result, this caused a shift in the Tory party because there was no one to advocate for these positions. You've had people from publications like The Canary, very, 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 very pro-Corbyn stances, who are now saying that you should leave the Labour Party because Keir Starmer doesn't represent Labour, which is actually the most stupid thing to do ever. If you want proper leftist policies, proper leftist, even socialist policies, you've got to be in the party. You've got to be there and advocating for them. You've got to get your MPs into the party. So leaving the Labour Party is about the worst thing you can ever do. Oh. Oh, we've got some Dalmatians coming up. I have to say, these are such wonderful dogs. They are really nice. I don't know if you can... There they are. Two of them. So yeah, thumbs up for the Dalmatians. There's a pair of wonderful dogs there. And it's it's advocacy. You cannot change. Well, you sort of can. UKIP being a prime example, but you cannot really expect to get a good leftist opposition effectively in this country running without at least 3 to 4 decades before you even got your first MP in, because our policy of first past the post just doesn't affect that. You've got to get into the Labour Party, you've got to get in there, and you've got to advocate it. Now, you may not like Keir Starmer, that's fine. I'm of the opinion that at the moment I'm not taking a stance one way or the other on him. At the moment, he's been really good tackling Boris in Prime Minister's Question Times, to a point where Boris doesn't want to show up at Prime Minister's Question Times, which is amazing. What he really needs to do, and I agree and I disagree on this point. A lot of his main criticisms at the moment are he needs to put policy forward. And I agree, he does need to put policy forward. But it's what policy does he put forward? Britain is going to change between, now and next year. The Britain of post 2016 is not going to come back. our economy is going to suffer. You know, chart back to some of the very first videos we said about Brexit when the initial reports about Brexit came out, that a hard Brexit, which we're going to get, is going to affect the economy, and we're going to lose 8% of our GDP. And The Economist that we read from was very, very clear. Trying to put in place policies to try and cover 2%, which would have been the softest form of Brexit we'd have had, would have been incredibly hard. But trying to put in place policies to try and cover 8% loss in GDP is all but impossible. Oh, hang on, we're getting quite windy now. So out of interest, can everyone hear me? Hopefully the microphone's holding up. And you want to talk about, I see a lot of conversations here about socialist policies. You want to talk about good socialist policy. We have a tradition in the UK of, especially, again, I'm going to talk about Public Health England. Public Health England is an amazing example of nationalised public health policy in the UK. And that has been part of our tradition. Public Health England is a leftist, pretty much socialist policy. And I think a lot of people misunderstand. I really do think a lot of people misunderstand, socialism. And I think a lot of people, if you don't understand socialism, I definitely recommend you go and read up about it. Read about other European countries, because a lot of other European countries, as was somebody said there, they're ruled by majority, socialist countries. A lot of the policies that Corbyn was trying to put in wouldn't even be an issue in places like Denmark, Finland, even Germany and France. Wouldn't be an issue. Wouldn't be an issue, but there you are. So my message is, if you are a Momentum supporter, if you are, or you know anyone who's a Momentum supporter, I'd say please do share this video, and especially the part where I talk about Momentum. Please do stay in the party, because if you leave the party, all that is going to happen is that the Labour Party is just going to lurch back to the centre. Now, I don't think Starmer, because Starmer has said that the 2017 manifesto, which we can all agree here was a good manifesto, was a good place to start Labour from. And I completely agree, it was. It is a good position to start from. So we know that Starmer isn't going to go and lurch back to being a centrist. But if all you Momentum members leave the party, and then you leave it back to, the Blairites, what's going to happen to the party? It's just going to go back to the centre. And all this work that you've put in is just going to be for nothing. It's going to go to pot. So I'd say to you, please do not leave the party. This is only just the beginning. No one ever said that this was going to be an easy overnight fix to try and get, a good lefty Labour government into power. It's going to take work, and we have put work into the Labour Party, and we have managed to achieve it. Now, my message to you, if you are a Momentum member and that you do not like Keir Starmer, for whatever reason, my message to you is simply this: don't hate the party leader, push against his policies. There has been a rumours and rumbling already that people in Momentum and on the left are going to challenge Starmer next year for a party leadership. We do not need at this time another civil war in the party. You can do it far better by advocating for leftist policies to be pushed forward, and by getting leftist candidates for local councils, mayorships and MPs onto your ticket and voting for them. That is how you affect change in the Labour Party. If you leave the Labour Party, that stops. And the exact thing that I told you about, that Labour will just make a lurch back to like a centrist right position, will happen. So don't leave the Labour Party. Don't hate on Starmer, hate on his policies, and advocate for better policies. Advocate for better leftist policies. That is what we should be doing. And my worry is that, you know, you've got these, and I'm picking on the Canary because they're the ones who are really pushing for this, you know, Starmer hate. Don't push him out so soon. Why on earth are you trying to initiate this leadership battle when he's barely been in a year? And like I say, we do not need a civil war at this moment in time. We need leftist solidarity. And what's going to be happened is that, if you remember, back when Corbyn, oh, a lot of wind there. Hopefully I'm coming through all right. What we need is leftist unity. It is going to be used against you that when Corbyn came in, a lot of you know, Blairite MPs didn't support him, and as a result, they took a lot of support from the party and Corbyn himself, and that damaged Labour as a whole, its election chances to actually get in. So what you need to do is say, okay, our candidate didn't get in, but you know what? We've got Starmer in. He's currently doing a good job against Boris. We're going to keep him in, and we're going to unite behind him, but we are going to advocate for traditional leftist policies. And what I would say, you need to pick 4 policies, Momentum, that you are going to advocate for. Pick those 4, keep those 4, and just advocate for them. Get your councillors into local councils. Get your mayors into cities and towns throughout the UK. Get your MPs into seats. That is what will help change the Labour Party more. You cannot affect the party from outside. You have to be inside. You have to be inside the party if you want to be able to affect change. And trying to stir up a civil war is not going to help it. So please do not start a ridiculous civil war in a time where we need a strong Labour Party and a strong opposition. Because I'll say this now, a lot of people on Momentum wanted Rebecca Long-Bailey to win. That was the Corbyn continuity candidate. And I worried about Bailey, I really did, because I'd seen her on programmes like Question Time, doing interviews, and she absolutely would falter and fumble and mess up completely. However, towards the end of the leadership campaign, I saw her phone into LBC, and she actually gave a good talk and speech. And I started following the party more, and she seemed to have improved. Now, I don't think she's there yet. I think Starmer was the choice to win. I can't see anyone else, being in that position now to be an effective challenge to Boris. And I think if she had got in, we wouldn't be seeing such an effective opposition that Starmer is put up against Boris. So, I have said, maybe in a couple of years' time, she will be a good prime ministerial candidate. That's what I think she will probably eventually turn into. However, she's not there yet. And I think you've got to be honest about that. Imagine her at Prime Minister's Question Times versus Boris standing at the dispatch box, staring each other down. Who would have done the better job, Starmer or Bailey? And I will tell you now, Starmer has proved he was the right choice to face off against Boris. Starmer has proved that even if Sunak or Gove take over the Premiership, which is, if Boris goes, those are the two big people likely to take over the Prime Ministerialship from Boris if he does go. We are betting on that Boris does go sooner rather than later. If not, it's certainly not going to be at the next general election, we can tell you that. So it's what do you do? We need a strong left opposition to the Conservatives at this time. And Starmer is doing a good job, because a lot of people are criticising him for not talking about Brexit. And I have to agree on this point that he is doing a really good job, because he is making sure 100% that Boris Johnson owns the catastrophe that is going to be a no-deal Brexit. And all the Brexiteers are going to have to own what is this catastrophe that is going to be. Because, it's already shaping up to be an epic catastrophe already. And I think that by not talking about it, he's letting Boris Johnson own it. And ironically, this was, this was meant to be the position Theresa May was used as. Theresa May was meant to be the sacrificial pawn to Brexit, someone they could blame for all its failures. And now it's not. Theresa May wanted, and even though she advocated for Remain at the referendum, she was like, I know how much damage this is going to do to our country, so I'm advocating for as much damage limitation as possible. And that's not what the Brexiteers wanted. They wanted as much separation as possible, and as we've talked about before, she wanted enough. The Brexiteers wanted to be victims. They wanted that betrayal narrative. Oh, we were betrayed by Theresa the Appeaser. That's the narrative that they wanted to push since day one. So, I hope my message resonates with a lot of people when it comes to these positions when it comes to regarding, Labour and the left. Yeah, you may not like Starmer. Sometimes you're never going to get a politician or MP you're going to completely 100% agree with. But you know what? It's sometimes better to agree with a guy that you only agree with 50% of the time than a guy who you only agree with 10% of the time. And that's the situation you're in, Momentum. Please, for God's sakes, do the right thing. You know, don't start a civil war. Push for advocacy and leftist advocacy within the Labour Party with policies, and get, key people into positions to change the party from within inside. That is what you need to do. And effectively, that's how we win. So, looks like there's a police helicopter put around in the sky, I think. Or it might be the air ambulance. I'm not 100% sure. It's been floating around. We're not too far from Barnsley Hospital, so it could be the air ambulance. So I'm going to take this moment in a bit of a lull to chill a bit. Have to excuse me, but yes, if you are new to the channel, please do subscribe to the channel. It helps out. You'll be able to see more videos about me talking about British politics. If you are already subscribed, please do like the video. It helps out massively, and remember to share it around. Again, that helps the channel out hugely. Down below, if you would like, there are my links to Patreon page and a one-off donation link if you'd like to support the channel that way. So thank you to everyone who already supports me. It's a massive help during this time, and it helps us advocate for more genuine leftist positions and policies, even in the UK. You know, left is best. To use the Majority Report slogan. So the other thing I want to talk about is Steve Bannon. I know we just said, we talk about UK politics, but Steve Bannon obviously being arrested last week for fraud by, of all people, the US Postal Service. I couldn't think of a nicer way for this guy to meet his end, because apparently he's looking at about 20 years in prison, I think, from what I've heard. So that is quite a significant period for him to be in prison and in jail. And apparently, from what we're hearing, this could get a few more Trump supporter scalps in the works as well. But the other thing that has been brought up, that quite interestingly, for those of you who may or may not remember, told Nigel and Bannon did meet up, and they had a little interview. And in this interview, Bannon said, "If you set something up, I'll fund it." Now, interestingly enough, Bannon isn't the most, he's not a massive, he doesn't have the money. However, other people that he knows has money to support these causes. And of course, you saw the quote, "build the wall," which all this is linked to. They raised, they conned Trump supporters into thinking that, if Congress isn't going to pass the bill to get the money to build the wall, we'll raise the money and we'll build the wall. Now, of course, only, I think literally about one section of this actually got built of the wall. And this actually, if you may remember a couple of months ago, this actually collapsed. This fell over to a point where Trump had to distance himself from these people, because Trump is pretty much a guy who is, you need to give me credit for stuff that you do, because Trump himself can't do anything. He's completely incompetent. He needs other people to do his work for him, and then he'll take the credit. Or he'll throw you under the bus, depending how it works out. So this has been quite a significant problem for Trump. I think it will cause even more problems. But as we said there, the problem of Nigel Farage, because right at the start of this year, remember the fact that the Brexit Party is really a defunct party now. It's done. It's gone. But the Brexit Party was never a political party. The Brexit Party was actually an incorporated business. You had to pay to join the party, and you'll never know where the membership dues actually went. But at the start of this year, Nigel Farage received quite, from what we know, a rather large sum. And you have to say, what exactly did Nigel get that for? So, you'll have to excuse me not reading comments today. Maybe we'll have a flick through towards the end. In fact, I'll tell you what, we'll pull up here and we'll have a read of the comments. Good. Have a little rest. Because that helicopter's still flying around. So. I see some good conversations going on in my chat. That's what I like to see. Oh, so someone's asked me a question here. So, are Tories brave enough for a no-deal Brexit? Are they giving in, or is another extension coming? I don't think there's going to be another extension coming. I think the thing is that Boris has he's boxed himself into a really interesting trap, and the trap really is that he's already set out in law that Parliament won't ask for an extension. So anything of an extension is going to be seen as a massive, massive climb down. Not only that, he sort of ran out of time for asking for an extension anyway, but from what we've seen, I think that if Boris did go to the EU and asked for an extension, he'd more than likely get it. I generally think that if he went to the EU, he'd more than likely get it. I don't think that there's too much of a chance that he's not going to get it. I can't see him not asking for it and not getting it. It might have to be voted in the EU Parliament. That will probably ultimately get through. He will get an extension if he asks for it. The problem comes for him because, we need to make more and more clear, Brexit is not about the economy. Brexit is politics. And politically, if Boris is seen asking for an extension, it's going to be seen as him being capitulating to the EU. And at that point, Boris, there could be a massive uprising. Because one of the key things that a lot of these new Northern MPs got voted in for was to get Brexit done. Now, as I've said to many people, this is just the beginning of Brexit. You know, we're still there after all this time. Even though we've had Boris come in, pass the withdrawal agreement, we are no further than when Theresa May was in power over about a year ago. Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed at all. So, you know, and he needs a lot of those votes. If not, the ERG are going to get uppity at him. You've already got people like Ian Duncan Smith and David Davis are trying to mount a campaign to get the withdrawal agreement ripped up and thrown out. That's going to be the next Brexiteer big thing. That's what they're going to try and advocate for. That is their next big move to get that removed. Because, you know, currently, this isn't the true Brexit. This isn't what people voted for. Of course, you don't actually know what people voted for, because at the referendum, Leave ran such a massive gambit of what Brexit actually was. You know, it's just absolutely insane. But there you go. Anything would be, it could instantly end Boris. I think you'd have such a split in the Tory party. It would just create another crisis, and Boris is desperate not to have another crisis. So if Boris has to keep the withdrawal agreement, he will do it. He will just you know, he will do it to save his skin. And I think that's what Boris is all about. He's all about him and the interests of no one else. So you've got to be aware of that fact. That there's no way Boris is going to ask for an extension for the withdrawal agreement. But October is going to be interesting, I'll tell you that now. October is going to be interesting. I'm predicting a massive crisis. A no deal, flash mood, you are right. A no deal will show just how much of a failure the Tories have been, because they promised this oven-ready deal, and that has not materialised. They said they had it ready to go, but no one actually talked about what was in the deal. So it's just going to be another colossal failure for them. And that's the fact. This is why we've said earlier today. This is why it's a good thing Keir Starmer isn't talking about any Brexit options or anything like that at the moment, because anything like that, Boris will instantly jump on and say, "Oh, it's Labour's fault that we're not doing Brexit," and it will instantly get put on. Boris will try and frame it, as will the right wing, that it was Labour's fault and it was Keir Starmer that stopped us getting the true Brexit, and, you know, went against the will of the people. That's not, you know, that's what they want him to do. So that's why Starmer is doing an amazing thing by just saying, you know, I'm not going to talk about it. I'm just going to let you know, walk into your own trap. Oh, I think we're starting to get some rain now. Woo. Yep, and it's raining slightly. But yeah, that's the interesting situation we're in. And I at the beginning of this year, if the coronavirus wasn't a thing, we'd have already had it. We'd have had a summer crisis, and I think we'd have had another issue with the Brexit, and we'd have had a massive, massive crisis. And that's the fact. of Parliament wanting to stay in session and try and work something out and discuss it. But Boris isn't like that. Boris doesn't want to be, ironically enough, even though he wanted to be Prime Minister, he didn't want to be a Prime Minister, he wanted to be President, which is why you've seen so much of Boris acting like a president in the past couple of weeks and months. And it has been echoed before in a lot of papers. That's what he's acting like. He's acting like a president. He's not president, he's a Prime Minister. He is the head of a representational democracy. And a lot of stuff that he's doing has just completely gone against that. So when the Brexiteers cry about, parliamentary sovereignty, they had no idea what they were talking about. They didn't even, we've said before that they didn't understand the EU, but it's even more embarrassing that these guys don't even seem to understand their own system. So, that's been the problem. That's where we've really been. And we are in this situation because the Leave campaign did not define what Brexit was, what it actually is, what it was going to do. They talked a load about, slogans, but slogans isn't policy. Brexit, and we've said it before, Brexit is actually policyless. There's no policies attached to Brexit. When we talk about Brexit, we can't really get into a lot of meat and potatoes because Brexit was brought up as this, fantasy project. It was brought up by, the children of Thatcher, because when Margaret Thatcher came in and, created the single market, they were really confused. They were thought that, Thatcher was against regulation. They wanted more deregulation. This is why Thatcher was such good friends with Reagan. You've got to deregulate everything. To quote Reagan, let the ball run wild. As a result, that's, brought us into an even worse position than we are now. And, the fact that just a couple of days ago, the Tory government now owes over 100% of the UK's GDP. We have passed the 2 trillion mark. And this was what austerity was meant to be against, so that, we could save money, so that we could actually spend money. That had been the Tory policy for years, for the past, since they were in with the coalition government with the Lib Dems. But that's where we are, unfortunately. Yeah, 2.4 trillion, I think it was. Yeah. And that's it. Anyway, any questions? Because we're coming up to end of the walk now. So we've still got the helicopter above us. Here we are, our lovely end spot, as is always. Getting this nice scenery in the background. And and there's a plane flying overhead as well. So, questions. So, would you join the Provisional Labour Party? This is actually a question I've been thinking about. Should I join the Labour Party or not? I've never been one to join political parties, but given what I've just said today, I am genuinely seriously considering actually joining the Labour Party, because as I said, if there aren't leftists in the party to advocate for leftist policies, remember, left is best, as you know, the majority report said, they are completely right, left is best. You know, we need people in the party to be advocating for, you know, left policies and left alternatives. You know, this is why, you know, I went on that, you know, my talk about, you know, there. If, you know, you've got people like in the Canary and other such publications like that, which are really pro-Corbyn, which are going, oh, you need to leave the Labour Party, or you need to overthrow Keir Starmer, you need to challenge Starmer for a leadership debate. That's not what we need. You know, that's not what we need at this time. But anyway, there you go. You can get a job in the food bank. Probably. That's probably true. But yeah, yeah, food banks, yeah, are an abomination, and they definitely should not exist. You know, that should be an aim of the Labour Party. You know, we should get rid of food banks, and not as a, you know, not because we should just get rid of them, but food banks should just disappear because they are no longer needed. That's what we need to do. Policies to get rid of you know, stuff like that. Cayman Islands, yeah, we need massive overdue of that. Oh, morning, Patrick. Joined us right at the end, Patrick, but welcome to the stream. The problem with food banks is that they are a charitable extension of, and represent a failure of the state to provide jobs and adequate you know, money for people to have a job with. That's the problem of food banks. Yeah, they are socialism to a extent, but they're not supported by the government. They're a charitable organisation at the end of the day. Nope. Oh, we've got another dog joining us. Oh no, it's not sniffing around. No. And yeah, to get well, the thing is, to get rid of tax havens, we need to be in the EU. To effectively get rid of tax havens, we need to be in the EU. You know, the EU is big enough to take on tax havens. That's part of why, when the EU started to talk about getting rid of tax havens, that's when Brexit actually first came into existence. All the way back in 2012, 2013, when it was first coined, it exactly happened around the same of those points. The other thing that would massively help, and I know this is going to annoy a lot of my Scottish viewers, another thing that would massively help get Labour into power and help us is stop voting for the SNP at national elections. Vote for Labour. Because those are 13 seats that Starmer could be using to help push against the Tory party. I know that's probably annoyed a lot of people, me saying that, but you know, if you're in Scotland and you genuinely want an actual change to this country, stop voting for the SNP at national elections. Those 13 seats are quite valuable to Labour. That could help tip the scales to get Labour elected. And yes, someone's right, we do need a change to the voting system. That is something that we should be advocating for. Starmer isn't opposing anything, though. He is opposing Boris. You're right that he isn't opposing Brexit, but that's part of his strategy. If Starmer starts opposing Brexit in any way, shape, or form, the Brexiteers, Boris, the national press are going to jump on Starmer and start saying that Brexit is failing because of him and the Labour Party. And we saw what happened at an election where Labour voters were told Labour is holding up Brexit from happening. What needs to happen is that these people need to be shown physically, unfortunately, how Brexit is such a bad idea. Remember, these people were told up in the north that Brexit was going to be good for them. It was going to make their lives better. That ain't going to happen under Brexit. This fantasy land that they're trying to concoct ain't going to happen. Yeah, if we do change the voting system, the Tories are done, which is going to be the big change. The other thing that we should be advocating for, and this is something that me and Nigel Farage actually agree on, although how we would do it, I don't know if we'd agree on, is to get rid of the House of Lords. The House of Lords needs to be gotten rid of and changed to something like a representational body, right, that represents, you know, people in the UK. That would be a significant change in British politics. You know, if you've got a House of Lords, that's another way that can be, you know, we can oppose Boris, because I suspect that might come up. If we can change that to a proportional representative system that represents people, and we change like the name to like the People's House or the People's Representative House or something like that, because I am worried that has been said lots and lots of times recently, Boris is ignoring the representational voice of our democracy. That is what our system is built to be. MPs are voted on to be representatives of the people's voice. And what Boris has done recently in a lot of his actions has been to ignore that voice completely, which has ignored things like that. I'd agree with you there. Yeah, the House of Lords has actually, you know, the House of Lords for the past couple of years has actually been the voice of sanity, especially in a lot of these, you know, these crazy times. The only sensible conversations about Brexit have happened in the House of Lords, and you are right that is the only thing that is keeping the Tories somewhat sensible. But you know, when you've seen that Boris can just go and elect a load of very, very pro Brexit MPs. I mean, you've got the House of Lords. It's so overstuffed with Lords at the moment. Most Lords don't even actually turn up to vote. There are a large section of Lords who have the power to do so, don't turn up, don't vote, don't make any bit of difference. That needs to be changed in the House of Lords. And I agree that at this time, when the Tories have so much of, you know, a vote in power and politics, you know, something needs to change. And changing the House of Lords to a representative body where it is based on the proportional vote of people, then yeah, it does need to change. But the problem is, if you've got, you know, Boris with an 80-seat majority, how does a vote to change that actually happen? How do you get it to be effective? How do you get it to change? You know, you know, you can advocate all you want, but if Boris doesn't want to change it, it ain't going to happen. And, you know, how many, you know, Tory MPs are you going to flip to be able to vote for it? So I think that's we've reached the end for today. As usual, thank you so much for joining us today. Please do hit that like button if you haven't hit it already. It helps every little bit. Please, if you are new to the channel, do subscribe. We talk about British politics a lot on this channel. We talk about other political things as well on this channel as well. Please do join us for those wonderful conversations, because they are often wonderful. And of course, join us for more to be notified more about these live streams that I do. I do live streams every Saturday morning, around about roughly about 8 o'clock. So, you know, join us for a nice morning walk in the lovely, lovely Yorkshire countryside. We do like to have fun on these talks. And as you know, we have nice discussions like we've had today. So, you know, hope to see you around. Do hit the like button. If you would like to do so as well, down below there are links to my Patreon and a one-off donation link. If you would like to support the channel that way, that will be hugely appreciated. You know, thank you so much if you do decide to do that. So, other than that, please do have an absolute wonderful weekend. Please do stay safe, as usual, because the coronavirus is still out there. Especially in the UK. We've had a lot of local lockdowns, but that's another thing. So thank you so much for joining us. You know, if you can't be safe, be sensible. Keep yourself safe out there, and we'll see you all next week for the usual morning walk. And of course, watch out for the other videos we've got coming out this week as well. So we'll see you all around.